Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of Hilaal Live. I'm your host, Luqman Shadrach. Thanks for joining us on Channel 347 on DSTV. Today's episode, interesting one. We do know the onset of AI, ChatGPT, has so many advantages for business. And I thought let's invite a business specialist into studio or via our Zoom link up and chat a bit about that. And today we're chatting to Brother Khalid Fadal. Assalamu alaikum, my brother, and welcome.
Walaikum salam, Luqman. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Now, when it comes to AI and data for SMEs, it's such an integral topic and sometimes can be really confusing for the general businessman out there as well. But in your opinion and in your experience, why should small and medium enterprises, and we call them SMEs, care about AI, and especially the one that I'm very interested in is data analytics?
Absolutely. It's a great question, right? And we're getting asked this question across the board. But one of the key things we got to keep in mind is small businesses don't particularly have the resources to compete with larger businesses, right? So from the onset, let's just consider from a marketing perspective, individuals, a small business might not have a marketing specific person, or they might not have a data analytics specific person. And this is where the onset of AI makes life so much more easier, right? So if you are a small e-commerce business, you're then able to do much better predictions, much better market analysis, a much better analysis of what your customer needs. And therefore, you're keeping less stock on shelves, as an example. From a marketing perspective, again, there's no need now to, I'm saying this in a bit of a broad context, but there's no real need to have a marketing person in-house, right? You mentioned tools like ChatGPT. There is a lot of other, AI models out there which could help small businesses do this. So what it's actually doing, though, is it's leveling the playing field, right? So you're almost allowing small businesses to start competing with larger businesses as we go through this entire process. And I think that's the big thing. And it is a bit of a concern in the sense that, we feel that small businesses who are not embracing, even if it's just a partial portion of AI, might get left behind. We might see more redundancies in businesses who are not actually accepting of these new technologies.
I think you raise valid points, and I think the way the world has changed and how business is evolving, it's actually a very good tool or product to have in your arsenal of products that you can then push out to your audience and to your clients as well. Khalid, maybe give us a few examples on how SMEs can practically use AI in their daily operations. Maybe that will make a bit more sense.
Absolutely. Without even realizing it, largely most of us have adopted some level of AI without even considering it, right? So something as simple as like Siri on your phone, that's an AI methodology. You already accepted that, right? But I think the onset of what we would call generative AI, so this is now shifting towards things like ChatGPT, DALL-E, and all these models, which can create new data based on past data, is very much, the big value proposition here. So again, let's just consider from a small business perspective. Previously, if you wanted to, view tons and tons of data, you would need to have someone who's very knowledgeable in that, who is really good at writing up some macros in Excel for you to do that. Nowadays, with a simple click of a button, upload the document into ChatGPT, you'd be able to then pull some really good, robust analytics from that. However, with that being said, and I don't want to jump ahead of myself in this, there is a lot of safety and sort of data, analysis considerations you want to take in mind here. And one of the big things is when you're using a big model like ChatGPT as an example, it's trained on a very big model. And because of that, the answers that you get could tend to be a bit more generic, right? The second part you also want to consider is all the data that you upload to something like a ChatGPT is then reused, right? So it is desensitized, but your data is now being reused to train the model moving forward. So yes, there is really two ways we can look at it. There is really good positives, and there's also a bit of a precautionary warning we want to just, bring forward that it's not all, roses, right? These models also, because they have not yet reached human intellect, they tend to then hallucinate. And what happens in these situations is it enters data into your data and it gives you false information. So based on those models, what you got to keep in mind is, as much as it is great models, you still got to be pragmatic about the outcomes, right? So yes, great, here's a great marketing plan for you, but at the same time, don't take it for face value. Rather use that as a 50 to 60%, entry into the marketing side, and let's add in our 40% human touch with regards to that.
Yeah. Are we then bordering on plagiarism? I mean, it can be very close to that as well. I'm sure you get this question often.
Absolutely. So again, it's such a good question, right? And again, there's really two schools of thought, right? So it just depends on how the model was created, right? So in the early days of something like a GPT, and sorry, I know I'm picking a lot on it,
Sure.
but it's one of the more common models. I think we're all very much aware of it, and our interactions with it seem to be quite high. But the early days, it would actually create references which were false, right? So there was actually a law case out there where somebody went to court and said, hey, listen, this is the case. And they went and presented this. And when the lawyers went and did a bit of a deeper dive onto this case, they realized that these references never existed, right? So
Sure.
Massive concern initially on that. But now with, the additions of plugins, etc., what we are seeing is that we are getting a bit more, academic robust responses back with regards to that. What you've also got to keep in mind, though, is AI data is clearly visible to AI systems, right? So if you sent an email to someone and there's already a lot of open source free websites where you can just copy and paste the text, and it will tell you what is the level of AI in that, that's also a bit of a problem, right? So from an academic perspective, you can't be having AI creating this. And I mean, all your cool tools like Turnitin, which check for plagiarism, in actual fact, now check for AI as well. So again, use it as a foundation, use it as a skeleton, but I think it's still imperative that the human intellect plays a big role in, putting the meat to the bone with regards to that.
Look, we are used to the free version right now. And actually, last night we had a chat about the paid version, which is a lot more advanced. And I mean, a friend of ours said, look, write me a dissertation on a particular topic, and it was prepared to do that. So hence my reason on the plagiarism side. And I get your point, say use it as a 60% tool, 40% tool, and the rest of it comes from you for the human interaction. And also we tailor make our business around the services that we offer. It can't be a generic type of service as well. But for those that are watching this interview, maybe explain to us a little more, how can AI enhance competitive intelligence, especially in the SME market?
Absolutely. That's a question very close to my heart. My MBA dissertation was on utilizing data for competitive intelligence. And what we actually identified, so just a bit of background, we actually interviewed like 700 businesses with regards to that. And we saw a direct trend that businesses who are familiar with not just their micro data, but their market and macro data. So they were not just working in a silo, but they actually identified what their customers, what their suppliers, what the country was doing, tended to perform a lot better. And again, initially it was a lot of research, right? So if you were a business owner, you'd have to spend a couple hours every day, identifying what is your personal analysis, etc. It's quite tedious work, but I think AI has at least stepped up the game for us with regards to that, right? You can then almost pull a personal analysis off the shelf for your business. Again, as you just mentioned previously, all businesses, have separate value propositions, right? And AI might tend to give you a very generic proposition. But what it does do, though, is it just helps you sort of isolate those niche points you should be focusing on. And I think that's where it really makes it a lot more quicker and easier to do. Again, just reverting back to the research, we saw that businesses were open to using data tended to perform better. So again, it's no use. It's just going to ChatGPT and saying, hey, listen, please give me a personal analysis. What you really want to be seeing is, okay, here is the personal analysis. Here is what the problems are, and this is how I can act on it. And I think it's that balance between the human AI, sort of value proposition that creates that additional value for it. But again, with that being said, it's imperative that the human part always moderates what the AI is providing.
I agree.
Because that way there we get the best output.
Yeah, absolutely. We're chatting to Brother Khalid Fadal, who is a specialist in the field of AI, and especially when it comes to creating better business models for you as a business owner as well. Brother Khalid, many SMEs, when adopting AI, are quite skeptical, because you look at so much that's happening out there in the world. People have been hacked. People are not sure that how safe their data is as well. And I'm sure this is a concern of yours, and also how expensive and complex something like this can be as well. How do you address these concerns, just to alleviate some of those fears that business owners have?
Okay, great question. I think for starters, always start small, right? So there's absolutely no reason for you to be going out there and building your own language model as an example, right? So let's just say business, no AI currently in there. it's quite easy to start off by saying, well, what is a pain point in my business? And let's just say we've seen a diminishing return in terms of clients coming back to purchase from us. So let's see what data do we have to start off with, right? And let's do some analysis on that. Again, something like a ChatGPT could assist you with that, right? So again, it's putting in some data with regards to your customer sales, whatever else it is, and you get some responses out of it. And you might be able to see some trends which you as a business owner might not have been aware of, but the AI modeling in the back end can see, right? So again, it's really cool to be able to see insights which theoretically we might not have seen, or we might have been blinkered to, right? So it's also a pragmatic approach in the sense that what we're seeing now is somebody else telling me this, and I can't really run away from those stats, right? So that's a great starting point. But again, with that being said, data privacy challenges always remain a challenge, right? So again, something as simple as X now saying, any tweets that come through are going to be used to be trained, are going to be used for model training. That is a concern, right? So how we tweet things now would actually start training the X's model. The same with ChatGPT, right? If we want ChatGPT to get to a version 5, version 6, unfortunately, it needs tons of data. Where does the data come from? Well, we're the providers of it, right? So we the individuals uploading data, the model then looks at it and then analyzes it and then adds it to its database. So future versions of this would actually be much more robust and a lot more accurate. Again, are you comfortable doing that? So that's a question you have to ask yourself. I don't think there is really a great response to that. I think it's each individual's sort of, view on how they want to see that moving forward. Right. However, we also just got to keep in mind that AI is being applied to many a tool. So, I mean, most of the tools that we have today, whether it is looking at your spell check, for example, or whether it is sending an email, Gmail, for example, now has AI built into that. So there's certain things that we can't run away from, but there is areas like ChatGPT, for example, where we could be a bit more risk averse and say, well, I don't want to put up data which might be sensitive. So when you are uploading data, just try desensitize it as an example and try and make sure that you're not sending personal data
of course,
up into
that's
the system
important.
as well.
Yep. We're chatting to your brother Khalid Fadal around AI and data for SMEs and definitely transforming small business into the success that they much need. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we chat a bit more about this interesting topic. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for watching us on Hilaal Live. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us. Today's topic is one of AI and data for SMEs, and hopefully this information will transform small business into much needed success. Joining us via Zoom is Brother Khalid Fadal. Assalamu alaikum again once again, my brother. Jazakallah for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Hilaal.
So we've covered quite a few topics prior to the break, and I think this will be so vital in allowing our business owners to use certain models, use certain apps, use certain technology to increase their business as well. But as we know, and as you mentioned before the break as well, data is our backbone of any business. And that is how we progress. That is how we collate the data and know how to move forward as well. But SMEs often struggle with collecting and managing that data as well. So if someone comes to you and asks you that type of question, brother, what is the best advice that you would give them?
Okay, 100%. I think, as you had mentioned, data discipline has always been an issue, right? And if your business has not been built on the foundation of data discipline, I'm not going to say it is a challenge to get going, but you know what? They always say that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Yeah. The next best time is today. So first of all, let's understand what data you have and how best can we collect it. And you don't have to be collecting it in very complex methodologies, right? Again, using something like Excel as an example or Google Sheets as an example is actually a really great place to start. And the benefit of using some of these tools, again, is that there is already AI plugins for that, right? So as you are entering data, you can already start getting some really good insights based on that, Yeah. So again, it's keeping it simple. It's don't overwhelm yourself. What do we have? And again, it's identifying what the pain point is, right? Yeah. So again, let's just talk about a drop of customer sales as an example. That would be the pain point. Let's identify what are the sort of data pipelines that we would need to solve, or at least identify what the root cause is of that pain point. We can identify what we have and what are we still lacking on, and then we'll just find ways of collecting the data, right? Again, there is primary and secondary data. If we don't have the primary data in-house, we can always refer to some secondary data, some Kenter reports or some sort of market research, and we can use in the interim just to sort of buffer our data. And as we start collecting the right robust data for our models, we can just move on from that. So that would always be the first starting point, is what do we have and where do we want to go, and let's just fill up the blanks between that.
But I think the common concern would be the protection and privacy of that data, because you've worked so hard to collate that data and use it to be integral to your business, the growth of your business. Protecting that data is definitely a concern.
Absolutely. And again, it's the discipline is on your side, right? It's an SOP issue. So when you start doing these things, make sure you document how it's done, right? So employees who have access to this data, make sure that we have data discipline procedures in place so that they don't inadvertently share data with individuals outside the organization. Again, just bouncing back to the original competitive intelligence portion, if the data is out in the open market, anybody can use it, right?
Yes.
So if you inadvertently share a spreadsheet to social media as an example, well, it's in the open domain. I'm not stealing any data, and therefore I have access to the data and I can then use it. So you just got to keep that in mind, is that great, collect all this data, but just make sure that you have really robust methodologies for securing the data, who has access to the data, how do we interact with the data, and ultimately, how do we share this data? So if somebody wants something from there, how do we do this? And the best way of doing this in actual fact is ensuring we've got robust standard operating procedures around it, and just ensuring that we have really good data security measures in place to prevent inadvertent leakage of the data.
Yeah, you mentioned Excel, start with a spreadsheet, things like that. But, the more advanced would be the CRM systems, your customer relationship management systems. And unfortunately, some small businesses may not afford. Are there affordable packages out there that a small business can invest in?
Absolutely. There's two that come to mind. I'm not actually punting any business here, but it's just the easiest from a CRM perspective, right? Because CRM tools can also become overwhelming. I mean, some of these CRM tools have like 200 different plugins that work.
But and acronyms.
Absolutely. It's never ending, Yeah. But I think Zoho and HubSpot are two that really, you could start off with quite easily. And why I particularly like HubSpot, for example, is we can track customer relations, right? So we can then track when customers open our emails as an example, and we can track our interactions with them, and we can actually follow them through an entire sales pipeline, right? So from the time we acquire them all the way through to the time that, they've made a sale, have they been recurring sales with them? And we can sort of get a return on investment on that, identify those numbers. On the flip side, Zoho is also really cool because it has a finance component into that, right? So you can do basic accounting on that. So instead of having Xero or something else on the outside, there's actually a free component in Zoho which allows you the financing. So again, there's no real one size fits all, but I think as the entrepreneur, you need to just go out and look at the different options. And again, there is a whole load of free options, and just try and find the one which meets the best needs for your business.
So if you look at some of the common trends right now, especially in AI, because it's such an evolving market or a stage in our business career where we are right now, what should SMEs maybe prepare themselves for? What can they look forward to?
Look, I mean, it's so diverse, right? And as you had mentioned, we're just seeing this explosion of new technologies rolling out. I mean, we're seeing things like how organizations are managing logistics based on best time practices, because now with all the data of traffic and all those sort of implications that we can run with it, we can identify when is the best time to have a truck go between two locations, right? So again, as a business, where do we want to grow to? What is our aspirations? And this almost goes back down to your vision, your mission, your goals, right? What do I want to be? And AI, in actual fact, can enable you to get there a lot quicker. So again, there is so much new tech coming out. And if you're in a data analytics driven organization, so a company which might be like in logistics, or it might be in commerce of some sort, there's so many ways of identifying future trends which can sort of hedge your business, right? So we could now see that if there is a market, sort of movement in Europe, how does that affect me as a business? Previously, it was very difficult to identify what those trends were going to look like, right? We would have to go out and do research and then try and run some, algorithms in the background to identify what those actual impacts would be. Nowadays, we don't have to panic about it, right? If we see that there is a movement in another country, we can almost ascertain instantaneously what that impact is going to be. True. And that almost helps us sort of hedge our business. So when something like a COVID, of fingers crossed it never happens again, causes massive shutdowns, businesses who are prepared, who have seen that there was a potential impact happening, are able to better prepare for that, and therefore create more sustainable, more robust, more reliable businesses moving forward. Yeah. So again, it really helps just protecting the business. It's protecting your assets, it's identifying trends and being able to act on them whether it's positive or negative. If there's an opportunity, you want to be the first one to see it. You want to be the first one to do that, but you need the data to sort of back you up. And you need to then embrace methodology to help you alleviate that burden from your shoulders.
Brother Khalid, as a strategist dealing with businesses on a daily basis as well, I'm sure you've got some wonderful success stories. Maybe share one or two with us on how AI has maybe transformed that business to achieve some of the results they've wanted.
Absolutely. I'm going to take a bit of a broader start with this. First of all, we had a helicopter operator who had rotor blades which kept on failing. And they were on a contract, and it's a big issue when the blades fail, because for every hour that they don't fly, they penalize 2 hours of that contract value. So it's a massive financial burden if, the machines are not operating. So we actually then used AI to identify what are the root causes of this. And what we identified is where the patterns, which crew was flying, where were they operating, whatever else it is. Again, we ended up with, I think, almost 100,000 data points. It was actually through those data points we actually identified what times of the year this operator needed to purchase blades, because the cost of purchasing the blades were really expensive, and they don't want to keep it on the shelf, right? Because money in the bank is better than a component on the shelf.
Sure.
So therefore, we were then better able to predict when the blades needed to be bought. Again, there's a lead time for acquisition, when it needs to be sent up onto location for the operation. And therefore, we actually reduced their downtime by 75%. So that was a massive win. On the smaller business side, we worked with an e-commerce organization, and they did some drop shipping. Now, the issue with drop shipping is, it goes from the supplier directly to your customer. But again, if there is some market interference that happens in between, let's just say now suddenly shipments need to route via the Cape because we can't send it through the Gulf. Those sort of things affect your pricing. And by using AI methodologies, we're then able to identify what is the most efficient methodologies of shipping components, shipping for this drop shipping organization, identifying what are the risks of tariffs, so now with new presidents in certain countries, what are the tariff implications on these guys for dropshipping, and how do they then adjust their prices dynamically based on these market interferences? And again, we're talking small business, right? I'm talking about an entrepreneur, or single man show who now has access to all of these insights to ensure that they have the best possible competitive advantage in the market.
Wonderful. Khalid, it's been so fascinating. I'm sure our audience is going to look forward to our next episode. There's so much more to talk about. And I'm sure with your vast experience, you would give us valuable information on how to grow the business sector as well. I'm sure people can follow you on social media if they need to get hold of you. Best methods to do so?
Yeah, 100%. LinkedIn, I think it's the easiest. I'm probably the most active on it versus the other ones. But if you're welcome to share my email address as well. I'm happy to field a couple questions. Always open for a chat. And I think especially just getting over the mindset of AI, the embracing part of AI. If people want to talk about it, happy to have a chat around that.
Great stuff. Brother Khalid, all the very best. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for having me. Alaikum salam.
There we go. Some valuable insight around AI and data analytics and how you could better use it in your business to grow your business, especially in an ever-changing world as well. Brother Khalid Fadal giving us valuable information. That's all that we have for you from the Cape Town team, Sohail Barnes and myself, Luqman Shadrack. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.